There's a letter that sat in the bottom drawer of a dresser for 47 years. The man who wrote it never sent it. And the woman it was meant for, she had no idea it even existed until 8 months ago. Harold Kowalski is 79 years old, lives in a small town in rural Wisconsin, one of those towns where the post office is also the bait shop. He's a retired electrician, widower, grows tomatoes. Seems perfectly ordinary from the outside. But Harold has been carrying something for nearly half a century. And the reason he finally let it go is one of the most quietly beautiful things I've ever come across. Stick with me, because the full story pays off in a way that I genuinely did not see coming. So let's go back. 1976. Harold is 32 years old, working nights at a factory in Madison, saving up, trying to get his footing. And one evening, at a neighborhood cookout, he meets Ruth Calloway. Now Harold is, by his own description, not a talker. He says, and I love this, he says, "I spoke maybe 4 sentences a day back then. 2 of them were past the salt." But something about Ruth just unlocked him. They talked for 4 hours straight about everything: music, their families, what they were afraid of, what they wanted their lives to look like. And at the end of the night, Harold went home and did something he'd never done before in his life. He sat down and wrote her a letter. Not a note, a letter. 4 pages, front and back. He poured everything into it. What he felt, what he hoped. He even wrote, and I cannot get over this line. He wrote, "I don't know if this makes sense to you. It barely makes sense to me. But I think you might be worth being brave for." And then he never sent it. He got nervous. He convinced himself he'd misread the connection. Told himself she'd probably think he was strange, writing a letter like that after one conversation. So he folded it up, put it in an envelope, tucked it in a drawer, and went on with his life. Ruth moved to Oregon that fall. They never spoke again. Harold married someone else, had kids, had a good life, a genuinely good one. He's very clear about that. But that letter stayed in that drawer through 4 houses and 47 years. Harold's daughter Marie, she's in her late 40s, lives nearby. She comes over to help her dad clean out the house last spring. And they're going through the dresser in the old guest room. And Marie finds this envelope. She almost throws it out. It's not labeled. No address on it. Nothing. She just asks her dad, "Hey, what's this?" And Harold went completely quiet. Marie told me later. She said, "I watched my father's face do something I'd never seen it do, and I've known him my whole life." He took the letter. He sat down on the edge of the bed, and for the first time ever, he told Marie about that night in 1976, about Ruth, about the 4 pages he never sent. And Marie didn't say anything for a while. She just sat next to him. Then she said, "Dad, do you want to find her?" Before we get to what happened next, if this story is hitting you the way it hit me, hit subscribe. I find these stories every single week. People who did something quiet and brave that nobody ever talks about. You don't want to miss the next one. Now, I need you to understand what kind of man Harold is. Because when Marie asked him that, his first response was not excitement. It was worry. He said, "She's had a whole life. I don't want to be someone who shows up and makes things strange for her." He didn't want to find Ruth for himself. He was worried about her. That detail, that one tiny detail, is what broke me. Marie did some searching. Ruth is 77 now. She did move to Oregon. She was married for 36 years. Her husband passed in 2019. She has grandkids. She paints watercolors. She's, by all accounts, happy. And she had absolutely no memory of Harold Kowalski. Marie found Ruth's email address through a mutual connection, and she sent a very simple, careful message. She explained who she was, explained that her father had something he'd wanted to say for a long time, and asked if Ruth would be open to receiving a letter. Ruth said yes. Not because she remembered Harold, just because, and this is what Ruth said, anyone who's been holding on to something for that long deserves the chance to put it down. Harold rewrote the letter, not because the original was wrong, but because, as he put it, that letter was written by a 32-year-old who was scared. I want to send the letter the 79-year-old knows how to write. He kept one line from the original. Just one. I think you might be worth being brave for. He mailed it. 3 weeks went by. Then one Tuesday morning, Harold's phone rang. It was Ruth. Marie told me her dad came out of that phone call different. Not dramatic, not movie-ending different. Just lighter. Like something he'd been carrying so long, he'd forgotten it had weight, was finally down. Ruth told Harold that reading his letter made her feel, in her words, wonderfully, unexpectedly seen. By a version of herself she'd nearly forgotten. The 30-year-old at a cookout who could talk to a quiet stranger for 4 hours and not notice the time passing. They've exchanged a few letters since then. They're not in love. This isn't that kind of story. They're two older people who gave each other a small, genuine gift. Harold finally got to say a thing he'd been meaning to say. And Ruth got to find out that once, a long time ago, she'd made a very lasting impression on someone. Harold didn't go looking for a happy ending. He just finally put something down he'd been carrying too long. And that quiet act, that one small brave thing, changed two people's lives. So here's what I want to ask you before you go. Is there something you've been meaning to say to someone? A letter you never sent? A call you keep putting off? A thank you that's 3 years overdue? Maybe today's the day. If this story moved you, like it. It genuinely helps more people find their way to stories like this. And if you want to be here for the next one, the retired librarian who secretly gave away $400,000 and never told a single person, subscribe. It's coming this week. I'll see you there.